Welcome to the Gamescape, everybody. My name's Jack, and today we're back in Chaos Gate Daemonhunters. This is episode 54, technically, of our playthrough. This is our season wrap-up. The previous episode, we defeated Mortarion and stopped the entire Bloom spawn, and that was awesome. A great fight, a really long fight. Again, 3 hours and 20 minutes. That video ended up being way longer than I had intended, but it wasn't one that really I wanted to stop in the middle or divide into a two-parter or anything like that. So if you guys haven't seen the whole thing, that's all right. It ended up going really well, and it was a great fight. I thought it was a great fight. There was, I would say, a very good mixture of reinforcements and the power of the main boss Mortarion versus two squads of knights. I thought was really good, and especially kind of towards the end of the battle when my outside secondary group that was guarding the gate were low on resources and they were letting more and more guys through, and it was really well done. I thought the balance on that mission was really great. So anyway, I wanted to just go through and do a wrap-up session on the season and just kind of talk about things that went well, things that didn't go so well, things I like about the game, things I think could be better about the game. And so I'm going to start with the things that I thought went well. First of all, we got through the game in a pretty reasonable amount of time, I think. It took us about 650 days, plus or minus a little bit, to finish. There is an achievement for doing it in 500 days, but this was our first time through, and we were on legendary difficulty. So while we weren't really anywhere near hitting the achievement, I don't think that what we ended up getting was unreasonable, given that there was a lot of the game that we didn't know, and it's not really that clearly spelled out exactly what you need to be doing. And so now if I had to go back and do it again, even on legendary difficulty, knowing what I know now, I think I could probably hit the 500 days, and we might try that sometime. I might do another season of this at some point. It's not going to be right away, but we might do that. Second thing, we did end up with a good group of knights. I think at the end we ended up with 12 knights. Most of them were level 8 or 9, but we had a few 6s and 7s left in there. They were, I liked how they ended up getting skilled out for the most part. A few of them we picked up late and at high level, and there were a lot of the knights there that were not very efficiently built coming in. Like the Paladin that we picked up, for instance, had 3 of his points, of his skill points out of 12, I guess it was, that were put into his ability to transfer will points around. Well, he only had 3 will points. It's like he's not transferring will points to anybody. All right. So that was kind of some wasted skill point allocation, I guess. But for the most part, I do like how the builds ended up. The main classes, the first classes, or the base classes, I guess you could call them, are all really good. I think that all of them have very strong points. All of them are good team players, and I really enjoyed them. The advanced classes are hit or miss, I think. The librarian is indispensable in my opinion. I think, especially getting on towards the mid and late game, you have to have a librarian. In fact, you should probably have 2. I should have probably had 2 librarians in our squads. That ability to use the group teleport is so clutch in so many situations. It's just unreal. It's such a great ability. The chaplain is very good in certain circumstances if he's built out correctly. The Paladin, I didn't have enough time to play with the Paladin. The Paladin's super tanky, obviously. As far as the rest of his abilities go, there's some hit and miss and stuff like that, I think. And I do think that all of the classes have something in their skill tree that isn't necessarily that great too. So it's not, they're perfect, but they're good. Right. And then we have the Purifier. The Purifier is based around fire damage. I don't like fire damage. And the reason why is burning only does 2 points of damage. When you're up against something that's got 30 or 45 points of damage, that's nothing. That's nothing. And not only is it nothing, it happens after they get to act again. And so it's really just not that useful burning and bleed both are not that useful of abilities in my judgment. So he can dish out some pretty serious damage if you get him kitted out correctly with his flamethrower, but it's short range. He needs speed boosts. He needs a better weapon. He needs a lot to be really super effective, I think. And so I think that's okay. But that's kind of just my thoughts on the classes real quick. I'm going to do a video on all the different classes. In fact, I might do a video on each class, as a matter of fact, that goes over their strengths and their weaknesses and maybe some decent builds and some ideas for builds for them. I do plan to do, now that I finished this playthrough, I do plan to do tutorial type videos, tips and tricks, and, you know, going through the classes and whatnot. So that'll be coming up. Third thing I think went well is the missions, for the most part, were challenging, but we were able to handle them. So, you know, some of them went longer than others, and several of our episodes did end up going longer than I really like. I'd like to keep episodes at about an hour, but especially towards the end, that just wasn't realistic with as difficult as the fights were. And so that's okay. I think that's going to happen on this high level of a difficulty anyway. So I was pleased, though, with the mechanics for the most part on the ground. And for the most part, I thought that the enemies were good and that the missions were good. A few things in our campaign that didn't go so well. There were a few choices that we made that negatively affected us. And a lot of that was because we didn't know, or I didn't know, I should say. And so we kind of picked wrong in a few cases. Two I can think of immediately. The first one was when during our second Grandmaster report, when Grandmaster Kai asked us what we needed help with, and I picked grimoires, and I didn't know that meant that was all we were going to get for missions, all of the missions for the next 2 months. I didn't know that's what that meant. That hurt us because we should have been picking up servitors to help get the ship upgraded. And then the second time that I can remember that was just absolutely a terrible mistake was when we gave up one of our prognosticars to help Vakir with her reporting to the Grandmaster and whatever. I don't remember the exact circumstances it was, but that was a huge mistake. And it probably cost us a few missions that we otherwise might have been able to reach if the prognosticar had still been monitoring the systems he was monitoring. So that wasn't a mistake that hurt us terribly, but it was a mistake, and I'm certain it did cost us a couple of missions that we could have reached. I think the other thing that went wrong, or didn't go as well as could have maybe, was that I put too high of a priority on research and keeping Vakir happy. Most games like this, you know, XCOM, Phoenix Point, etc., research is highly important. It's not as much that important in this game. It's just not. Especially now that I know that the stratagems are completely useless during the last full third of the game. The entire Act 3, stratagems are gone. You just don't get them anymore. And so I made some sacrifices to keep Vakir happy that I probably didn't need to make in retrospect. So knowing what I know now, I would probably do that differently as well. If we take a look at the research menu here, there's a lot here that just didn't need to be done. It just didn't, because it ends up being useless. All of these, except for Gate of Infinity and maybe the first one that you get, which is Quicksilver. If I had to go again in this, the next time I do a playthrough, I will probably learn those two stratagems and nothing else. And that's going to be it. These abilities over here, we didn't know until later that these only were affected by systems your prognosticars were in. So I spent a lot of time researching these two that didn't necessarily need to be done. I could have gone to the Source of the Bloom much earlier than I did, and that would have moved us forward. Now, that said, you still need to upgrade the Baleful Edict. And if you don't, you're going to be hurting. Warp speed, especially, and hull strength, especially, are extremely important as far as I can tell. Warp speed, because you're not going to make it to your missions, especially after the map expands in the mid game, if you don't have your warp speed upgraded and then are ready to upgrade it again relatively early into Act 2. And so I think that that's super important, and we didn't know that, and we didn't really get that done, especially, like I said, losing the entire we lost an entire 2 months of not gaining servitors when the grimoires were coming at us, and that hurt us badly too. We did not get the Baleful Edict as upgraded as I would have liked. Also, you do need to keep a really close eye on your hull integrity, and you need to get those shields built up a couple levels at least as well, so that you're not stuck dodging these guys like we were over on the side of the map kind of towards the late game. We couldn't get down into here where we needed to go because the cruisers were in the way, and there was nothing we could do about it. So this game that I've loaded here that we're looking at is from about 2 episodes back. So it's back when our hull is still all trashed and stuff like that. So just in case you were wondering. So I think that was a couple of the things that could have really gone better with this campaign. And now that we know what we know, I think next time we do this, it'll be much better than that. Things about the game itself that I really like. I really like most of the mechanics on the ground. I really do. The way that knights move and act, and the differences between power armor and Terminator armor, I think are really good. I am a bit of the opinion that all armor should have some armor value to it and not just hit points, but that's a small thing. Space Marine power armor is supposed to be really tough, and in the game it just maybe it adds a couple of hit points to your guy for the most part. And there were some suits that we saw that could be upgraded to get armor, but I think that the power armor suits should have 2 armor points each, and the Terminator armor should start with 4. But again, that's a balance thing. I don't think the fights are outbalanced against that. I just think that all of your Marines coming home hurt after every mission it could be better, right? Especially since it takes so long for them to heal. Now, we never upgraded the Apothecarian in the ship. There is a way to get it to have your healing time and then have it again, so your knights are healing at basically a quarter of the time they normally would. But we didn't get that far, so that's kind of moot. And the fact that you can't send hurt knights on the little missions is difficult too, because you're not going to have unhurt knights, especially early in the game. I don't think that's realistic. It's just they do more damage, or they take more damage than what you generally have the ability to heal, especially early, because your serval skulls aren't nearly as good, and you're not outputting the damage early in the game that you need to kill the enemy before they can kill you. And so there's a especially right at the beginning, like I said, there's a problem there with your knights just being hurt all the time. Second thing, though, that I do like about the game, and I think this is a really great mechanic, is the warp surges. They're a pain in the neck, but I think they're a really, really great alternative to hard timers on missions. That was one of the things I really hated a lot about XCOM 2, was how it, like, almost all of your missions, you have X number of turns to complete it, or you just lose and you're just done. With the warp surge mechanics, you can dilly-dally around if you want, and it's not going to end the mission. But the more you mess around and the longer you take, the more you're going to take damage. Your knights are going to get, more and more behind. They're going to lose willpower. They're going to lose hit points. The enemy's going to get tougher. They're going to get more mutations. There's a lot of different things that happen in those warp surges that I think that's a really great alternative. Now, the caveat to that is there are in this game, obviously, with the spreader missions, they are hard timed. You have 10 turns, and honestly, those were my favorite missions of the main 3. The reason why I like those missions, even though they're on timers, is because you can control the timer. There is a mechanic there to extend the time by going and closing the vents, and you can add to your time. And so you're not completely out of control, and you don't have to necessarily be super reckless in getting to where you need to go so that you can get there in time. You can advance. You want to advance quickly, but you can still make a measured approach. You don't have to just go, completely all out running as far as you can every turn. And I think that's good. And you can even stop and take a fight or two that you wouldn't necessarily have to take if you're in a situation like you need seeds or something like that. there's enough leeway in those missions with the ability to close vents to extend the timer that it's not an issue. And so those, like I said, those were my favorite missions. I really enjoyed the kill the spreader missions. So I think that was good. Another thing I really like about the game itself, story is good. I enjoyed the story, and you end up learning a lot about your compatriots, and they're all they're not super deep. You know, you don't spend a lot of time with your compatriots talking to them, but you learn enough about them to make them interesting, I think. You know, especially Vakir, you know, and she starts talking about how, you know, she doesn't really get along with all the other Inquisitors necessarily, and she doesn't exactly see eye to eye with all the other Inquisitors, and you know, she's kind of on the hunt to try and really find a way to resurrect the Emperor more permanently than just having him in the Golden Throne, and so on and so forth. I thought those were really kind of cool little story points, you know, that you got to learn from her as time went on. And the same with Brother Ektar and with Lunette too. You know, they both had, you know, Brother Ektar had his story about why he's not allowed to leave, and Lunette had her, you know, history with the ship and so on. So I did like the characters in the story as well. So those were great. Back on the ground, thinking about the combat, the AI in this game, I think is pretty good. And even here on the star map, the AI was decent too. These cruisers cut us off a few times and beat us to where we were going. And I don't know if that was just random chance or if they were actually doing that on purpose. I suspect it was on purpose. But there were several missions, especially like the Reaper missions, where they would intercept us and we'd have to fight that cruiser before we could go after the Reaper. That happened to us, I think, twice. And so the AI in this game does a pretty good job. Now, it's not perfect, right? But it's good. You know, the enemies do a nice job of putting down suppressions and overwatches in, you know, especially overwatches point in different directions to really cover each other. I was actually pretty impressed a lot of the time with how the overwatches got laid down by the AI, and how it was really difficult to break in and get to them. So that was good, I thought. There were other times when I thought that it made bad decisions, and you know, it's an artificial intelligence. It's not going to make perfect decisions every time. It's got parameters it's going to follow them. But I thought that was okay. You know, I enjoyed it. I thought the difficulty of the enemy was good. They weren't unbeatable, but they were challenging in almost every situation. And so I really, really enjoyed that about this game. Last, I loved the Reapers. The Reapers were great. 4 bosses that you end up having to fight. All of them are completely different. They all have different weaknesses, different strengths. There's different ways to kill them. They have different defenses. They have different types of backup. It was just, those missions were a lot of fun, especially after just the same 3 missions over and over again, which I'm going to talk about here in just a minute. But I did enjoy the Reapers. I thought they were great bosses. They were great fights, tricky fights, right? They were hard fights, and a couple of them we didn't pull off by very much. And so that was okay. That's how a boss fight should be. And especially at the end, Mortarion was awesome too. Again, super long fight, but I enjoyed the heck out of it. And, you know, going against Mortarion with all the extra guys coming in and having to go deal with the bloom roots and so on and so forth. It was a great fight. I really, really liked that last fight a lot. Some things I think could be better about the game, and we're going to kind of wrap up with this because there are some things that I think could be better about this game. Number one, I would love to see some kind of a mechanic that you could recover willpower during a mission that wasn't just killing bad guys, especially on these longer, more difficult missions. I'm not a fan of the change that they made during the patch where you only get 1 will point per kill, per attack, no matter how many guys you kill. I think it was supposed to be that way from the start, and they fixed it so it was that way, but it really limits how much you can really use your abilities because there aren't that many guys to kill, especially later in the game, right? But later in the game, you're up against much tougher, but many fewer enemies, right? So instead of, you know, 10 cultists with their little tiny pea shooter guns, you're up against a Hellbrute, right? Or a Chaos Spawn Demon. Well, the Hellbrute takes more damage than all of the peons together, but you only get 1 will point from it, right? And so it's like, it's one of those things that's like, you got to be really careful, especially late in the game, with how you spend your willpower, because there's no other mechanic to recover it. And I think there should be. What I would love to see would be something like a recover action. And this is something that Phoenix Point has that I think is a good mechanic, is you can take an action to recover will points. It would cost you all your action points, and it would end your turn, so that even if you got more action points from somebody getting an execution, for instance, it wouldn't matter because your turn is over. I think that would be a nice mechanic, and that action would gain you back some number of will points. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's half of your total, whatever, right? But I think it's almost necessary. Now, there is the ability to gain will points on warp surges that you can research from the apothecary, and I think that that's okay, except that you're not covering that much of the map, generally speaking, and it also doesn't work in warp storm, and it's just a lot. So I think that would be a nice addition. I don't expect that'll happen. Maybe the modders will do it when this thing gets out to modding, if it gets out to modding, but I don't suspect that's going to come from the game, the studio. But that's okay. It's just something I think it would be a nice addition. I think they have made the decision that will points should be hard to get back, and that you just need to use them sparingly. I just don't know how realistic that is, especially on high level games. Although we did manage, right? We did manage, but especially in this last mission where you saw down to the end there, like my entire interceptor squad guarding the gate was, or not interceptor, my entire squad guarding the gate was out of will points, and they couldn't do anything. They were getting 1 or 2 kills per turn is all out of all of the guys that rushed in the gate. And so that was bad. Second thing is stratagems only being useful for the first couple of acts in this game, I think is an absolute garbage mechanic. I think it's terrible because you can spend so much time researching these things, right? I mean, if you really get into it, you're getting down here to where you're getting these opened up to where you can use your stratagems more than once per mission. And I mean, that's a lot of research. And this is a lot of seeds expended to get that research done. And then for the last third of the game, it's just gone. You just can't use it anymore. I think that's awful, and I think it needs to be fixed. Or there needs to at least be some kind of, I don't know, a warning isn't useful, I guess. It's just going to be your first game. You're just going to have to find this thing out the hard way. But, honestly, like I was saying earlier, if next time I play, I will research warp field penetration, and I will research Gate of Infinity, and I will research what is it? It's Quicksilver. I don't remember where it is. Wherever Quicksilver is. Anyway, whichever one that is. I think you get it with this one, maybe warp field penetration. But yeah, you get Quicksilver here. So I'll research this one, and that'll be it on this side. Nothing else, I think, because those two are very useful, and that's it. You're done. After that, pick up the extra warp, the extra slot, maybe, I don't know, but I think that's it. But that way you're spending a lot less seeds. Save your seeds for upgrading your weapons, and don't waste them on this, because you're not going to be able to use these for the entire last part of the game. That's my thoughts on that. I think that's a terrible mechanic. And I get the reason why it is, because Vakir in the last part of the mission, all of these are supposed to be coming from Vakir and her help, and she's tied up in the last part of the mission, but still, you spent all this time researching it and all these resources researching it, and then it's like, okay, nope, done. You can't use them anymore. Sorry. So I didn't like that. I thought that was terrible. Third thing about the mission, about the game, I could be better, is the missions that you're on are very, very, very repetitive. For most of the game, you're doing one of 3 types of missions: kill the seed carrier, destroy the bloom spawner, destroy the spreader, which is the timed version. A wider variety of missions in this game would be really nice. It got really grindy towards the middle. After you've done kill the carriers for the 15th time, it's a little much. And so a wider variety of missions would be great. That probably will come in DLCs, I suppose. I don't know what their plan is for releasing DLCs or anything, but at any rate, it's grindy, and it could be better. But anyway, that's just some ending thoughts on the campaign and what we went through. We're getting about 25 minutes here, so I want to get this wrapped up. But anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the playthrough, despite the things I didn't really care for about the mission, about the game. The stuff I liked about it far, far outweighed it. I thought this was a fantastic game. I really, really enjoyed it. I loved the campaign. I loved the characters. I loved the missions for the most part, even when they got grindy. Figuring out how to build my squads was great. Just taking the time to kind of go through and figure out what are good builds for some of these knights was kind of fun. I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed the story, and the whole thing was just a great. And also, you guys have been great. I am glad that you were with me on this journey, and thank you all for watching and your comments and all that and your likes on our videos. So I really do appreciate that. You guys are all rock stars. I really appreciate it. So that's going to wrap this up for this episode, guys. I'm going to be starting another playthrough at some point. It's not going to be right away. I do still have my Pathfinder playthrough going. So I'm going to work on that. And like I said, I'm going to be working on some tips and tricks type videos for this game for a little bit. But I will get on to another game. If you have games that you think that might be fun for me to play, I am open to suggestions. Just throw a comment down below there with whatever game you think would be cool. Won't necessarily do it, but I will definitely keep it under advisement. And if we get a whole bunch of people all suggesting the same game, maybe we'll take a shot at it. So anyway, I just once more time wanted to thank you guys. And if you've enjoyed this video or this series, do me a favor, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to this channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.